All right, so the back to school season is upon us, and it comes up out of nowhere, right? As we're settled into this new summer routine, doing our thing, living our summer life, and then like bam, right out of nowhere, that commercial, you know that one, right? You know that commercial that comes in where the mom, she's like putting the last minute supplies in her kids' backpacks and dancing as she sends them out to school. Well, oh my God, that means that it's back to school time, right? Well, shit, what happened? Right, it's August, but it's already that time of year. And every time I see that ad, I wonder how the teacher on the other side of that ad is feeling. Like I know how the parent feels, right? The parent is excited for the routine of school to return, for that strain and logistical conundrum and expense of summer camps to be done. But what is going through that teacher's mind? And how are they managing it? So today we're going to talk about what is going on in the teacher's mind, how to navigate that transition back into school, and prepare you for the stress that you may be anticipating. So my name is Mary Ann Lombardi. I'm an executive turned founder, author, mom, and former teacher. And I help people build confidence and independence by earning a full-time income off of a part-time business so they can work from home, spend more time with the people that they love, and really love their life again. So if you enjoy these videos, please let us know. Right, you know, in the comments somewhere, just say how great we are, because it makes us feel better. Like if you look down in the comments, somebody's going woohoo, and it makes you happy. So just do that. It'll make you happy too. Or subscribe so you don't miss a one. But today, when we get in this conversation, I brought in a ringer. I brought in an expert. I brought in somebody who knows a shit more than I do about people's mental health and how to help them manage. So I want to welcome Dr. Mary DeRaedt. So Mary, come on in here. Hey,
hi,
how are you?
Good. How are you?
I am doing great. So I'm hoping that you can really help us navigate this transition, right? Help these teachers figure out how to maintain or keep their sanity as they navigate this transition of coming out of this summer, of all this time with their family, all this time, you know, with their kids, and a little bit of leisure after a really tense, stressful time in the classroom. How can we help them think about, prepare for, move into this stage of getting back into the classroom? But before we do that, tell us who you are. What do you do? How do we know you?
Yeah, so I am Dr. Mary DeRaedt, and I am currently the director of school counseling at George Washington University, but I am a former elementary school teacher for quite a few years and school counselor. And also I have been an individual counselor for the last 20 years. So I've been working with children and adolescents and parents and teachers for probably about 30 years now, as well as being one. So I get that commercial when I see it. It stresses me out too.
Can you remember that feeling though? Can you remember that time as a teacher, you know, after the summer, kind of preparing for it?
Yeah, there's this feeling you have when the school year ends, there's a feeling of, oh, okay, that's behind me. Okay, I have the whole summer ahead of me. And then you see that ad and you go, oh, it's over. It's almost over. It just brings that back. That's the stress and the thought process of what I have to go back into. So yes, I remember it. I have felt it. I still feel it now as I anticipate the coming school year at GW. So
yeah. Well, can you help us understand what to do with that feeling of anticipation? Because in some ways, just the thinking about it initiates this stress response, and nothing's happened yet, right? Like we're still in summer, we still have 3 to 4 weeks to go, but just the thinking about it is powerful.
Yeah. I think what happens for us is that we start to go, okay, last year was stressful. Last year, we went through a lot of things, maybe the last few years, in all honesty, with COVID and all of the upheaval that's been going on in schools, the last couple of years have been extremely stressful. And because we get to the end of the year and we go, I need a break, we don't really get a chance to process that experience. And so it's looming. And then the next year is coming up. And so it just starts to bring to mind all of the struggle, all of the stress, all of the work all of the engagement, all of the drain, the emotional output that we have to put in as teachers. And it starts to just throw us into the future and make us start thinking about the future in terms of the past, which is very stress causing. It ramps up our anxiety. Our brain starts prepping for it, starts pumping our heart, getting us all amped up.
So how do we stop that? Right? Like how can we, what can we do to sort of put a stop to that kind of future thinking?
Yeah. So one of the approaches that's really useful, because it's this ramping up, right? And the minute we start to have a feeling, our feeling starts telling us about why we're having that feeling, and we start having all these thoughts. And so the first place that we need to do is to interrupt the stress cycle, because the stress cycle is I start to feel stress. I start to ramp it up by thinking more about it. It kind of goes up, and then we're up at the peak of it. And we need to kind of interrupt it before it gets to a peak. And so stopping the thoughts that ramp it up, stopping those like anticipatory anxiety thoughts and worries in their place, and bringing ourselves back into the present moment. It's still July, or it's just the beginning of August. We still have time. We still have space, and like bringing us back into the moment and saying, okay, I am not going to start thinking about all the negative things. Right? That's a starting point. I am not going to start dwelling on and really digging into ruminating is the word I'm looking for, like going back over all the negative things that happened last year, because that's one of the things that happened. So stopping that thought process, saying to ourselves, I'm not going to sit here and think about that. Whether it could also be thinking about all of the emotional output, all of the, the politics of being in school, the relationships, the parents, whatever it is that is ramping up our stress, taking those thoughts and interrupting it and saying to yourself, that is the future. I am now. I am here in this moment. I am present in this moment. There are grounding activities you can do to kind of interrupt that biological response. The really common one is taking deep breaths, but a really interesting one that's not many people think about is kind of like finding smells. So our five senses bring us back to the present moment. And so any use of the five senses will bring us back to now and take us out of that kind of thought spiral of the future. So having some smells around you. I've known people who get little jars with smells in them that they like. And when they start to kind of stress out, they pull the jar out, take the lid off, and just smell something nice, maybe candles, even like textures. Sometimes just putting yourself in a colder environment, moving into a warmer environment, just shifting your experience so that your brain goes, oh, wait, I'm here now.
Oh, I love that. I love that idea of thinking about it from the perspective of the senses, because that's so interesting. My kid used to always love smooth rocks. And so sometimes when they would get stressed out, they would hold a rock, and they had certain ones that they liked. And it just the part of the repetition, but also that texture was very calming for them. And I find that also sometimes when I get stressed out about like my brain runs, I go pet the dog. And there's something, I always thought about it from the perspective, oh, it's a dog. Dogs are always relaxing. But it hadn't occurred to me that maybe it's also the texture of the dog's fur and that kind of thing that plays a role in it as well. That's really cool. I like using the senses in that way. That's great.
Yeah, just tapping into your five senses, any of them that allow you to kind of visually, it's a little bit more challenging, but like anything that allows you to feel your body to feel back in connection with this time.
Yeah,
is a great thing.
And once we do that, once we stop that ruminating, that future thinking, that sort of train that's moving forward, what's the next step after we stop that? What's something that we could do next?
Right. So in a lot of ways, what we need to do is replace those thoughts, right? We need to replace those like predictive thoughts. We need to give our mind something to hold on to, because it's holding on to the stress thoughts. We want to hold on to the non-stressful thoughts. So a really good thing to do is to come up with 2, 3, even 4 truths about the coming year, truths about where you are right now that you can kind of hold on to and repeat to yourself and remind yourself that things are going to be okay. Some of those things they will be specific to you in the sense that you have to kind of decide what your stressors are. But a lot of them, if maybe you were not anticipating being a teacher this year, maybe you were hoping that the summer would give you a chance to find something else, another direction to go in, and now you're back to teaching. So a truth for you might be something like, you know what, I have an entire year now to prepare for more formally to leave this profession. Right? I have an entire year now to look around and see what's best for me, and I can do that. Number two would be something like, I have time to get this done. I do have time. I have space. I can make space. I will be able to get some of these things done. I will be able to accomplish what I need to accomplish. Another one might be something along the lines of, I will change the way in which I engage this year. I can change the pattern. I can do different things. I can do new things that I haven't done before. So just finding the issue that is yours, the one that is your kind of stress response, and going, I can't solve that now, but I can come up with something new, or whatever that is.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So it's stopping the thought in its place, replacing that, the what's going on in your brain, right? Like replacing those thoughts with a truth that you know. And then once you do that, are there ways that you can prepare yourself for the coming year to make it so you don't like go immediately back into the same behaviors and the same actions and the same relationships that you had the previous year, right? Like when you step back into school.
Yeah. So it's really interesting how we kind of, at the end of a school year as teachers, we go, okay, that's over. And then we want to put it behind us, right? It's like, oh, I don't want to think about that anymore. But that school year is still with us, and it's driving our anxieties. And so we don't want it to be in charge, right? We don't want the anxiety to be in charge. We want to be in charge of the experience. And so by taking a minute when we're calm, when we're not in a stress response, when we've kind of brought ourselves back to our truths, we want to revisit the last year and look at it from kind of an observer standpoint. We don't want to like immerse ourselves in it. We want to we're observing, we're stepping back, kind of like in meditation, when you observe the thoughts going through your head, you want to be in an observer position of the past year. And you want to look at the times and spaces where you felt the most stressed, and really kind of analyze what was going on in those times and recognize what maybe was going on that you could do differently next year, and identify places where you might change the way you approach something. I know that one of the things that always stressed me out as a teacher was that I would spend so much money on my classroom because I wanted it to be good for the kids. And I had all these ideas and all this creative ideas of what I wanted to accomplish. And so I would be like, oh, well, the school's not going to pay for it. I'm just going to go out and pay for it so I can accomplish it. And I think that would cause me stress. It would leave me at the end of the year down on money. I didn't have enough to do what I wanted to do. I felt used by the school system because I had to pay for my own supplies, which made me resent it. It made me resent students. And so I would maybe look back at that year and go, you know what, next year, this was a big source of stress for me. Next year, I am going to set a budget of an amount I know I can afford, and then stick to it and not spend any more than that, and not go over it, and not give in to kind of my desire to, go over the top, because this is maybe just one more year of being a teacher and I'm going to move on to something else. So something like examples like that, or maybe you invested too much emotionally in parent-teacher conferences, because parents really love their children and they want their children to be successful. But when they come into parent-teacher conferences, it's really hard to hear some of the things that we have to tell them as teachers. And so we take that responsibility on, because I don't know about you, but I find myself as a teacher being very empathic, being very caring, and wanting people to be successful. And when I have to tell parents that there's something going on with their child, it's stressful. So maybe putting some more mental gates around my empathy in those moments and being able to step back and plan ahead to say, here's the information I have. I know this is hard, and I'm sorry that I can't solve this. And then maybe come up with coping mechanisms afterwards, things to do after parent-teacher conferences that help you feel more relaxed. Maybe get a massage. I highly recommend it. There are affordable options out there. But so planning ahead, looking back at the past year, planning ahead with new ways you can engage in your teaching, new things you can do that are identified by the stressors from the previous year to try to head off some of that negativity. And it can also, coming up with new ideas for how to handle things can spark your own creativity and actually engage you a little bit more in enjoyment of the year, because you're engaging your creativity on your own behalf.
Yeah.
To help you cope better.
Oh my God, I love this. So I love this pattern of thought stopping when that you know, the thinking train gets ahead of itself and that stress gets going, and then replacing those thoughts with more positive or truths, as you said, truths to help you, and then looking back at the year when you have with a little distance, the past year, to help you figure out either new boundaries or new ways of approaching or plans to put in place to give you some structure around some of the primary stressor points that went on in that previous year. That's really awesome. Those are really great.
Well, hopefully they'd be helpful. I think
I know we'll have to ask our teachers after they try them.
I think the only other thing I would say is that sometimes we need to make things concrete in order to reinforce them. Again, tapping into our 5 senses. So when you come up with your truths, I highly recommend writing them down. There's been a lot of science behind hand writing something down and having it be remembered better, and also having it present. Like I tell people in my therapy all the time, write it on a Post-it note, post it on the mirror of your bathroom, post it places in your house, maybe create something concrete like a bracelet or something where you can touch it and be reminded of your truths. That's kind of the historical value of mandalas and rosaries and things. And then whenever you come up with your new ways of engaging, find some way to make them concrete, some way to remind yourself to do them and make them fun.
Yeah, no, I love that. Oh, Dr. Mary, thank you so much for spending a little time with us and helping our teachers really come up with a plan for how they can navigate these next couple weeks and leading into the school year. And so to recap, we talked about thought stopping anytime the stress comes up. We talked about using our 5 senses to help us do that, to ground us in the present moment. We also talked about making sure that we have truths to sink into, that we know that keep us grounded. And then also looking back on the past year with some distance to understand that to create a plan and to create some boundaries around the things that really stress us out. And then finally, having something to cement it. Definitely writing it down, but I love the idea of creating a bracelet or something that, or I don't know, even if it's like a picture or the Post-it notes or something that you can look at. I love all of these ideas. They're super concrete and tangible. And so thank you so much for this great practical advice.
Of course, my pleasure.
Awesome. Well, where can people find you?
People can find me mostly on LinkedIn. And I have a website at GW where you can look, and if you're interested in school counseling, where you can find more information about me.
Great. Well, we'll link all your links in the description below. And thanks again for your time, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Great. Bye.
Bye.